Montecito, the 10th of December 2025. A cold, clinical tension has settled over the Sussex mansion as a 24-page legal dossier, branded with the insignia of Markle and Roth LLP, is dispatched directly to Clarence House. This is no holiday greeting from a daughter-in-law to a king. It is a calculated financial ultimatum. Meghan Markle has officially triggered a media and legal firestorm, but this time, the weapon isn't a Netflix documentary or a tell-all memoir. This time, she is using the ultimate leverage, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Under the guise of securing their royal heritage, Meghan is demanding a staggering £122.88 million educational and security trust, effectively turning the lineage of the crown into a billable asset. Imagine the atmosphere behind the palace walls as King Charles III reviews this document. It is not just the numbers that stun, it is the corporate coldness of the request. Meghan's proposal treats royal identity as a set of entitlements, listing elite private schooling, public relations, integrity training, and a £5 million security buffer. To the unsuspecting eye, it looks like a mother's concern for her children's future. But to those who understand the royal playbook, this is emotional blackmail. By framing these demands around the children, Meghan is attempting to corner the monarchy, pay up to protect the image of the heirs, or be branded as cold, discriminatory grandparents on the world stage. Yet, the true crisis is not happening in London, but within the walls of the Montecito estate itself. While Meghan executes this campaign with the precision of a Silicon Valley CEO, Prince Harry is reportedly descending into a state of absolute frenzy. Insiders describe him as spiraling out of control, caught in a psychological trap between the remnants of his loyalty to the crown and the escalating demands of his wife. Harry is realizing, perhaps too late, that the red line has been crossed. Meghan has reached into the most private aspects of their lives, including details of the children's psychological development and academic history, to use as ammunition in a legal battle Harry never truly wanted to fight. Harry's spiral intensified when he discovered that he had been largely excluded from the script of this latest maneuver. He is watching the woman he loves transform the Windsor legacy into a vending machine for nostalgia, while he faces total isolation from his brother, William, and his father. He is spinning in a vortex of fear that the only legacy he truly wanted for Archie and Lilibet was respect and family. But those are being traded for invoices and litigation. Harry is no longer a partner in this strategy. He is a spectator to his own family's commercialization, and the weight of that realization is causing a mental collapse that the Montecito walls can no longer hide. The devil, as they say in the halls of Buckingham Palace, is always in the details. When King Charles's private secretaries began to deconstruct the 24-page dossier sent by Meghan's legal team, they found something far more disturbing than a simple request for help. They found a meticulously engineered bill for services unrendered. At the heart of this demand is a concept Meghan calls educational parity. It is a term borrowed from the corporate world, yet applied with surgical precision to the royal bloodline. The argument is simple, yet devastating. If Prince William's children are afforded the highest level of state-funded security and heritage-aligned education, then Archie and Lilibet, as titled Prince and Princess, are owed the exact financial equivalent in cash, regardless of where they live. The breakdown is enough to make any taxpayer's blood run cold. We are talking about £480,000 per child, per year, just for cultural representation programs. But it doesn't stop there. The most galling part of the document is the demand for £2.22 million in backdated schooling expenses since 2021. Meghan isn't just looking toward the future. She is attempting to invoice the crown for the years she chose to live in California. To the palace, this isn't about education. It's about a royal exit fee disguised as maternal concern. It is a bold, some would say desperate, attempt to monetize the very institution she spent years criticizing on global television. While these numbers are being crunched in London, the atmosphere in Montecito has turned toxic. Prince Harry is reportedly reeling from the realization that his children's lives have been turned into a financial project. Sources close to the couple suggest that the inclusion of Archie and Lilibet's private psychological evaluations in the legal appendix was the breaking point for him. For a man who spent his entire life loathing the goldfish bowl of royal life, seeing his own children's vulnerabilities used as Exhibit A in a cash grab is a bitter pill to swallow. Harry is beginning to see the double standard not in the palace, but in his own home. He is caught in a paralyzing paradox. If he speaks out against the filing, he betrays his wife and the life they've built in the U.S. If he remains silent, he becomes an accomplice in the final desecration of his family's dignity. This is the source of his spiral, a man who left the UK to find freedom, only to find himself trapped in a new kind of prison, where the bars are made of legal fees and the currency is his children's privacy. As Meghan prepares for a potential mediation with the Home Office, Harry is left wandering the halls of their mansion, a prince in name, but a ghost in his own marriage, watching the Windsor brand being liquidated for the highest bid. While the legal machinations of Meghan Markle continue to stir the waters of the Atlantic, a different kind of royal blueprint is being revealed within the gates of Windsor. This is the moment where the Montecito demands meet the Windsor reality. To understand why King Charles felt empowered to sign a decree of total financial rejection, one must look at the figures standing behind him. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, and her children, Lady Louise and James, Earl of Wessex. For years, these two were the invisible royals, raised without titles, educated in the national system, and shielded from the spotlight. Today, they have become the monarchy's ultimate weapon, a living proof that a royal legacy is grown in the soil of service, not purchased with a legal retainer. The psychological contrast is devastating. While Meghan's 24-page dossier argues that Archie and Lilibet require millions for heritage-aligned education, Lady Louise was quietly completing her degree at St. Andrews, walking the same halls her cousin William once did, without a security detail or a PR firm in tow. The palace is sending a silent but thunderous message. True royalty is not a brand you wear, it is a character you build. Sophie Wessex, often called the late Queen's favorite, has raised her children to be prepared, not pushed. They don't need an invoice to prove they belong. Their presence at military events and veteran recognition ceremonies provides a moral clarity that Meghan's litigation simply cannot match. For Prince Harry, watching the sudden public adoration for Louise and James is reportedly like salt in an open wound. Insiders suggest that Harry's spiral is fueled by a profound sense of regret. He sees in James the quiet, disciplined soldier he once was, and in Louise, he sees the grace of the grandmother he adored. Seeing his niece and nephew being praised as the future of the firm, while his own children are being used as exhibits in a lawsuit, is shattering his sense of self. He is realizing that by trying to protect his children's titles through demands for cash, he has inadvertently turned them into outsiders, while the children of the quiet aunt have become the new gold standard. This is the mirror of duty that Queen Elizabeth once spoke of. Sophie Wessex doesn't need to shout. She simply has to show up. Her children's re-emergence is the palace's surgical response to Meghan's entitlement. It's a culture war where the currency isn't pounds or dollars, but dignity and restraint. As Meghan prepares to double down on her equity narrative, Harry is left staring into the mirror, realizing that the more they fight for leverage, the more they lose the very thing they are fighting for, a place in the heart of the nation. The spiral continues, and the distance between Montecito and Windsor has never felt more like an unbridgeable canyon. Just as the palace's legal team was drafting a formal refusal on December 13th, the game changed. A verified internal leak from the Sussex's own advisory circle hit the front pages of the Telegraph, and it was devastating. This wasn't just a leak of documents, it was a leak of intent. The world saw, for the first time, a communication strategy deck designed to frame the royal family as gatekeepers of an elitist system. The plan was to use Archie and Lilibet not as children, but as symbols of systemic exclusion, leveraging the American media's obsession with equity to shame King Charles into opening the royal coffers. But the true nuclear moment came with a 45-second voice memo, allegedly recorded by Meghan herself during a strategy meeting in late September. In a voice described by insiders as clinical and sharp, she was heard saying, "If the monarchy won't help raise my children the way they helped raise William, then I'll make sure the world sees the double standard." The reaction in Britain was immediate and visceral. This wasn't a mother's plea. It was a threat. Within hours, hashtags like #CrownNotCurrency began to trend, and the British public, already weary of the Sussexes' grievances, turned cold. Even in the U.S., media giants like the New York Times began to question the entitlement trap Meghan had set for herself. For Prince Harry, the fallout of this leak was the moment his spiral turned into a freefall. Sources close to the Montecito estate reveal that Harry was blindsided by the existence of the voice memo. He had spent years trying to protect his children's privacy from the paparazzi lens, only to find that their names were being used in a media mitigation strategy choreographed within his own home. He is reportedly terrified that this latest maneuver has permanently severed his last remaining link to his father's heart. He is no longer just a prince who left. In the eyes of the British public, he has become a prince who permits his children to be used as tools for litigation. The psychological toll is evident. Harry is said to be livid, but paralyzed, realizing that the very privacy he moved to California to find has been sacrificed on the altar of a £128 million demand. He is watching his wife's corporate precision destroy the one thing money cannot buy, the quiet dignity of the Windsor name. As the palace prepares a formal constitutional response that could strip away the last of their symbolic standing, Harry is left in the wreckage of a strategy gone wrong, caught between a wife who views the crown as a brand and a family that views it as a sacred trust. On the morning of December 14th, the palace moved with a speed and coldness that silenced the Montecito legal camp. This was not a back-and-forth negotiation. It was a total institutional shutdown. Following the leak of Meghan's voice memo and the public outcry that followed, King Charles III, in consultation with Prince William and his constitutional advisors, released the Royal Succession and Title Ethics Review, Winter 2025. This document was the Crown's ultimate shield. It stated, with clinical precision, that royal titles are symbolic honors and do not, under any circumstances, guarantee financial subsidies or educational funding unless the individual is actively serving the sovereign. The most cutting phrase in the entire review, according to palace insiders, was a direct rebuttal to Meghan's heritage-aligned argument. The monarchy is not a vending machine for nostalgia. With those words, the palace effectively devalued the Sussexes' primary asset, their royal connection. The decree made it clear that while Archie and Lilibet may keep their titles as a courtesy of birth, the British taxpayer and the Privy Purse have zero obligation to fund their lives in a foreign republic. It was a total legal blockade. By the time the Home Office rejected Meghan's petition for mediation 36 hours later, citing a complete lack of jurisdiction, the Sussex legal strategy had collapsed into a heap of expensive, useless paper. For Meghan Markle, this was a rare and stinging defeat. Her corporate precision had met its match in the constitutional permanence of the British state. But for Prince Harry, this was the moment the floor vanished beneath his feet. The Title Ethics Review didn't just reject their request for money. It codified their status as non-working, non-entitled individuals in the history books. Harry is reportedly reeling from the realization that his father hasn't just said no to a check. He has said no to the very idea that the Sussexes belong to the future of the institution. The spiral has reached a new depth. Harry is now seeing his brother, William, taking a leading role in these ethics reviews, effectively acting as the architect of Harry's exclusion. The psychological weight of being formally erased from the financial and institutional blueprint of the family is causing a total breakdown in Montecito. While Meghan is said to be pivoting toward her next brand launch to recover the losses, Harry is left in the wreckage, realizing that in trying to leverage the kids for cash, they have lost the one thing that truly mattered: their place in the lineage. The vault is closed, the decree is signed, and the Prince of Montecito is finding that his titles are starting to feel more like a weight than a wing. In the aftermath of the final decree, the atmosphere inside the $14 million Montecito estate has shifted from high-stakes strategy to a haunting, clinical silence. For Meghan Markle, the palace's rejection was a business setback, a variable in a complex equation of global branding that simply didn't yield the expected result. Sources close to the Duchess suggest she is already in crisis management mode, meeting with her US-based legal and PR advisors to frame the rejection as yet another example of institutional cruelty. To her, the kids weren't just leverage. They were the last card in a high-stakes game of poker, and now that the hand has been played, she is looking for the next deck. But for Prince Harry, the no from London didn't feel like a business loss. It felt like an obituary. Insiders describe a man who has retreated into a strategic vacuum. Harry is reportedly spending hours alone, disconnected from the frenetic energy of Meghan's rebranding meetings. The realization is finally sinking in. By allowing the kids to be used as a financial bargaining chip, he hasn't just lost the money, he has lost his standing as a beloved son. He is now the custodian of a hollow title, living in a house where the walls are closing in. His spiral has transitioned from outward panic to an inward, paralyzing shame. He left the UK to escape the trapping of the monarchy, only to realize he is now trapped by the consequences of his own demands. The tension between the couple is said to be at an all-time high. Harry's frenzy is no longer about the palace, it's about the mirror. He sees a version of himself he no longer recognizes, a prince who allowed his children's psychological data to be leaked for a trust fund that will never materialize. While Meghan views the royal succession and title ethics review as a hurdle to be bypassed with a new Netflix spin or a lifestyle brand launch, Harry views it as the final tether being cut. He is realizing that in the cold, transactional world Meghan has built, there is no room for the quiet dignity or sentimental loyalty that defined his youth. This is the fracture that the world is starting to see. Harry is a man caught in a psychological no man's land. He cannot go back to London, for he has betrayed the very ethics the monarchy just codified. And he can no longer find peace in Montecito, for he has seen the price tag placed on his children's heritage. As Meghan prepares to launch a new offensive in the American media to reclaim the narrative, Harry is left wandering the grounds of his mansion, a ghost of the prince he once was, realizing that the leverage they thought they had was actually the weight that is finally pulling them under. While the legal debris of the Sussexes' failed petition smolders in London and Montecito, the global stage has shifted its gaze to Rome. On December 14th, in a move that felt like a surgical strike against the Sussexes' narrative of exclusion, Princess Catherine made a landmark appearance at the Vatican. This was not merely another royal tour, it was a masterclass in moral positioning. While Meghan Markle was arguing in 24-page legal dossiers for the billable value of her children's heritage, Catherine was being appointed an honorary UN patron for children in conflict zones, a title granted not through litigation, but through a decade of consistent, quiet stewardship. The imagery was devastating for the Montecito camp. Catherine, granted the rare papal privilege of wearing white, stood as a symbol of institutional stability and grace. She didn't need a PR firm to announce her worth. The world's leaders were doing it for her. In her speech, she uttered words that many saw as the final clinical nail in the coffin of Meghan's equity argument. True legacy is not the inheritance of title or access. It is the slow, intentional building of character. For every child who suffers because adults choose scandal over service, we must do better. Back in California, this was the moment Prince Harry's spiral reached a state of profound, haunted isolation. To see his sister-in-law, the woman he once described as the sister he never had standing on the world stage with such undeniable moral authority, while his own wife is being analyzed by legal pundits for entitlement, is a form of psychological torture. Harry is watching Brand Sussex be eclipsed by the dignity of Windsor. Sources suggest he spent hours obsessing over the global headlines. Even the U.S. media outlets that once served as his safe haven are pivoting. The New York Times recently observed that while one duchess seeks recognition through litigation, the other earns it through silence and stewardship. For Harry, the Vatican appearance was a mirror reflecting his own exile. He is beginning to realize that the double standard Meghan spoke of in her voice memo does exist, but not in the way she intended. The world is rewarding those who carry the burden of the crown, not those who try to invoice it. As he watches Catherine and Sophie Wessex unite the institution, Harry is finding himself a stranger to the very legacy he tried to leverage for cash. He is no longer the beloved prince. He is the man who traded a seat at the Vatican for a legal dispute in Montecito, and the weight of that realization is causing the final cracks in his mental fortitude. In the quiet, wood-paneled rooms of Windsor, a new doctrine has been established, one that effectively dismantles Meghan Markle's entire legal strategy. It is the doctrine of earned identity. While the legal dossier from Montecito argued that Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet were born with a market value that the Crown must subsidize, the reality unfolding in the UK presents a far more humbling truth. The contrast has now centered on a single, stinging comparison: the Sussex children versus the Edinburgh children. On one side, we have titles being used as leverage for trust funds. On the other, we have Lady Louise and James, Earl of Wessex, who were raised without the very titles Meghan is now fighting to monetize. The psychological warfare of titles has turned into a rout. Palace insiders revealed that the most damaging part of the Sussex petition wasn't the £128 million demand, but the heritage-aligned curricula proposal. Meghan essentially asked the Crown to fund a specialized education for her children in America that would prepare them for their royal roles, while simultaneously living a life entirely detached from royal duty. To the king, this was the ultimate paradox. How can one prepare for a role they have already abandoned? The answer came through Lady Louise. Without the HRH styling for most of her life, Louise has emerged as the most respected young royal of her generation, proving that the Crown's power lies in the person, not the paycheck. For Prince Harry, this realization is the epicenter of his ongoing spiral. He is reportedly haunted by the image of his children growing up in a commercialized vacuum. He sees Archie and Lilibet being styled as prince and princess in a country that fought a revolution to reject those very concepts, while his niece and nephew are being celebrated in London for their quiet, unentitled service. Harry is beginning to understand the irreversibility of the situation. By allowing their titles to be linked to a financial demand, those titles have lost their sacred quality. They have become products. Insiders suggest Harry has reached a state of chronic anguish, watching as the palace formally integrates Louise and James into the Royal Office of Public Representation. They are the new gold standard of the Windsor future, the children who were prepared in silence. Meanwhile, his own children are being framed in the media as the expensive outsiders. The spiral is no longer just about a legal defeat. It is about the cold, hard fact that Harry has traded his children's authentic place in the family for a legal battle they are destined to lose. The bridge is gone, the mirror is shattered, and Harry is left in the quiet halls of Montecito, realizing that some legacies cannot be bought back once they are sold. The walls of the Montecito mansion were built to keep the world out, but they have also become the silent witnesses to a marriage reaching its absolute breaking point. While the global press fixated on the palace's legal no, a far more intimate tragedy was unfolding behind closed doors. The moment it aired, a dramatically titled U.S. streaming special, A Royal Mother's Plea, the mask finally slipped for Prince Harry. Insiders reveal that Harry was not informed of the final script or the timing of this broadcast, which Meghan positioned as her last stand for Archie and Lilibet's rights. But it wasn't the demand for money that broke him. It was the desecration of his mother's memory. In the special, Meghan reportedly made reference to Princess Diana's private journals, suggesting that her struggle for financial independence was a continuation of Diana's own thwarted legacy. For Harry, this was the ultimate red line. He sat alone, watching his wife use the very trauma that defined his life as a rhetorical tool for a legal cash grab. This wasn't just a strategy. It was a clinical exploitation of a legacy he had spent decades trying to protect. This is where the spiral became a total emotional crash. Harry realized, with haunting clarity, that he was no longer a co-pilot in his own life. He was a passenger on a ship steered by a woman who views the Windsor name as a commodity, and his mother's pain as a marketing asset. In a state of sheer desperation, on the evening of December 18th, Harry did the unthinkable. He initiated a private video call to Prince William, the first direct contact between the brothers in over 7 months. No lawyers, no PR advisors, no cameras. Sources close to the Prince of Wales say the call lasted only minutes, but the impact was permanent. Harry reportedly sought a way out, a path to protect the children from the firestorm his own household had created. But William's reaction was not one of anger. It was one of resigned, clinical exhaustion. He looked at Harry not as a brother to be rescued, but as a man who had finally exhausted the monarchy's mercy. This is the peak of Harry's spiral, the realization that there is no home left to return to. By allowing Meghan to use the kids as leverage, he has effectively burned the bridge he hoped to one day cross. He is trapped in a $14 million prison of his own making, watching Meghan pivot toward her next brand launch while he mourns a heritage he can no longer claim. The psychological disconnect is now total. Harry is a prince in exile, realizing that in his quest for freedom, he has lost his soul, and in his fight for equity, he has lost his children's future. The silence in Montecito is no longer peaceful. It is the silence of a house that has finally collapsed under the weight of its own demands. As the morning of the 20th of December 2025 dawned over a frost-covered Windsor, the British monarchy did not issue a press release to argue. It simply issued a photograph. The image, captured outside George's Chapel, showed 5 figures walking in unified silence: Prince William, Princess Catherine, Sophie, Lady Louise, and James. There were no microphones, no dramatic lighting, and no pleas for public sympathy. In that single, frozen frame lay the Crown's ultimate reply to the 24-page dossier from Montecito. It was a visual manifesto of a family that understands that power, in its truest form, does not need to shout, it only needs to endure. Lady Louise Windsor, walking beside her cousin William, held a small notebook. Written across the cover in her own hand were 3 words that have since gone viral across the globe: "Service is strength." It wasn't a slogan for a brand launch. It was a quiet reaffirmation of a 1,000-year-old truth. While Meghan Markle's legal team was quietly withdrawing their financial claims following the Home Office's stinging rejection, the Edinburgh children were stepping into the light, not as entitled heirs, but as prepared servants. The contrast was now complete. The world saw a duchess in California who viewed royalty as a vending machine, and a duchess in Windsor who viewed it as a sacred trust. The final resolution issued by the Privy Council that morning was clinical and permanent. It codified that royal titles, when detached from royal duty, are merely symbolic ghosts. The vault is closed, the door is locked, and the Sussex strategy of using the children as leverage has resulted in the total institutional isolation of their household. For Prince Harry, the spiral has landed him in a desolate reality. He is a man who tried to secure his children's future by threatening his family's past, and in doing so, he has left them with a heritage that is recognized by law but rejected by the heart of the nation. As 2025 draws to a close, with carols echoing through the halls where Queen Elizabeth once stood, the monarchy has emerged from this crisis not weakened, but refined. It has learned that its survival depends not on the market value of its brand, but on the moral inheritance passed down through women like Sophie and Catherine. Meghan's demands will be forgotten by the next news cycle, but the image of Lady Louise's quiet command will remain. In the end, the Crown did not need to crush its critics. It only needed to remain itself. The lesson for Montecito is as cold as the winter air. You cannot invoice a legacy. For a legacy is not something you are owed, it is something you must prove you are worthy to carry.